Okay, so this is about creating an avatar within your industry. The reason we look to do this is to benchmark where you are against what the potential out there is for the industry that you operate in. So by creating a Usain Bolt or a Michael Jordan, if you like, of a blueprint of that particular company that's doing everything particularly well, and then we can look at the opportunities for the gaps, if you like, and then look at execution and strategy and see where the efficiencies are and where there's profit opportunities. So what this means, and we do this with customers, we create customer avatars, but not so much with companies. But it's a good idea to do so because competitors in the industry will have their own inefficiencies. There's certain operators who will be good at certain things like marketing or product development or social media or certain best practices within their company. But it's unlikely that across the board there's going to be one company that embodies all of those different aspects. So rather than benchmark against competitors, which is a technique, it's a good idea to create this avatar and then look to see realistically how you can bridge the gap between where you are and that particular avatar. Now, it needs to be robust. The information that you use to build it needs to be relevant information. It can't just be some aspirational nonsense that's plucked out of the ether. So we're going to look at market intelligence. We're going to look at any information that's available out there. So product intelligence, the market understanding. So some of these things are desk studies. Some of it's looking back at records, public data. So company returns. There's publicly listed companies probably in your sector. There's indicators from privately operated companies in terms of how their resources and the way they go to market that gives some suggestions about their profitability. And then there's all the internal knowledge that comes within a certain sector from employees and everything else. So you're trying to piece together all that relevant information and put it into something which gives you a meaningful read on what would an avatar company or an exemplar company in that space look like. And we're looking in terms of resilience and profitability, really. So this is a financial avatar, if you like. So profit on the income statement, you've got gross profit at the top of the income statement, you've got operating profits or net profits or profit before tax at the lower end of the income statement. Efficiency measures, and we'll get into that later on, but it's good to have efficiency measures to understand how effectively the company is using its resources, and that will obviously have an impact in terms of the operating profits at the bottom of that income statement. Resilience talks to solvency and liquidity from a financial perspective. So how well equipped are you to commit to your short-term liabilities, debts, etc., over the next 6 to 12 months, and then solvency in the longer term. So what is your sort of debt to assets ratio or debts to equity ratios? And there's different metrics you can use there around solvency, and then other measures as well. So what do you aspire your business to be in terms of total size? And that may be limited by what the available market, it may be limited by your own aspirations or what you want the company to achieve. So it's not necessarily talking about growth for growth's sake, just talking about maybe defining what is realistic and what is achievable and what would represent an outstanding business in that particular market. And it's pretty important that you try to become an outstanding business in your market and that you are one of the more profitable and one of the more successful, because if you're not and you're in the middle of the pack, then the likelihood is that you'll slip backwards, because those in front of you who have more cash and have more profit are able, if they're smart, to invest that into research and development, into training, into other things that actually strengthen their position and therefore push everybody else further away. So it's not really that feasible to stand still in a market the way that it operates today, because everything is so dynamic, everything happens so quickly, everything gets cannibalized, and ideas and innovations get cannibalized very quickly. So you can't really afford to stand still, because if you are, you're generally going backwards. And I know that is a bit of a cliche, but that's the reality. So what size do you aspire to be? From a resilience point of view, designing a stress test, which is something I talk about elsewhere, but having a stress test that you can put the company through that it will pass. And that is a bespoke test that would be built around a particular market and the type of industry that you're working in, as to how long could you survive a step down in cash flow, a step down or a delay in collections, unforeseen costs and other things hitting the business. So you can build quite sophisticated stress models that you can put the business through and say, would it survive that at any given time? And obviously your avatar, you would expect to be able to survive something like that, because that's the essence of the avatar. It is resilient, it is strong, it is profitable. So what you will end up with is a model then, and these are metrics which I've proposed here just for an example, but you may not pick these particular ones. But I've got a top line revenue. So this business is aspiring to be a £15 million turnover business with a gross margin of 50%, an operating profit down at the bottom of the income statement of 15%, which again, we looked into the market and said, well, what do companies earn right now? What would be possible? What's a stretch? What's aspirational that could be achieved that would make this company outstanding? Inventory turnovers as a read of efficiencies that may not be relevant if you're in a service industry, etc. But again, just for demonstrating the thought process. Debts to assets ratio, so looking at liquidity and solvency, and you can work working capital into that equation as well. So again, you're building something bespoke, but you're ending up with an avatar with some very clear metrics and reads on it that you can aspire to. So what you then have is a current state. Where the company is right now. You'll have an avatar that you've created which is good in all areas, is strong in all areas, and there will be a gap then, and that size of the opportunity will be represented in the gap between where you are now and where you aspire to be. So you can set your business against an avatar, you can compare the two, and you can make a decision about where the gaps are, and then we can try and understand what is the cause of those gaps and how can you close that. So the idea of what comes out of this is clear actions that you can then go away and take. But from a financial point of view, the size of that option is a quantifiable pounds or dollar figure. So for example, if the business was a £3 million turnover or revenue business with a 12% operating profit, and the avatar was a £5 million business with a 15% operating profit, the difference in operating profit between those two businesses is £390,000 a year. So as a stretch, that is what we're saying would be achievable to get from A to B, from the current state to an avatar. So can that be locked in? What are the underlying actions, and where are the weaks or the soft spots, if you like, in the existing business? And that's what you're really aiming to get to close that gap. Could you close it by 100,000, 200,000 more? That's very much worth exploring, I would suggest. And even if it's not about growth, even if you're just talking about retaining the business in its current state, but you want it to optimize for what it's actually doing, then the difference between a £3 million revenue business, a 12% operating profit, and the same size business with a 15% operating profit is £90,000 a year, which again is very useful money, which can then be folded back into research and development, into training, into innovations, into understanding the market better, into diversifying, into all sorts of things that would strengthen the business and give it options going forward. So really, once you have a liquidity measure, efficiencies, profits, solvency measures, they will then feed back into strategy and execution. What are you actually doing, and how are you doing it? And so are you doing the right things, and are you doing them well? So that's really what it boils down to. So once you've built the avatar, the idea really is to sit it alongside your existing business, find the gaps, and start the exercise in terms of identifying what are the underlying things which are making a financial gap between where you are and where you actually want to be.